children all make a letter C? Can you make a letter C, Zach? You can't? Well, you should, because that's probably the only part that you're going to remember from all those 5 words, because they're big words, right? So it goes like this. In times of challenge, that starts with a chi, and controversy, Abraham's courage, compassion, and credibility is what ruled the day. So that's what I want you children to remember as you go through life. You need courage. We've been talking a lot, me and Elmer, going to school. Now, can you remember a time when Abraham was very courageous? What did Abraham do that was full of courage? Anybody think? First, God told him to leave his house. That took courage, right? To leave his father's house. And then Abraham, I believe, there were 4 kings from one side and 5 kings on the other, and they had a war. And it absolutely had nothing to do with Abraham until they took his nephew Lot. So it took a lot of courage for Abraham to muster up, 318 servants, Elmer? Only 318 servants go fight these 4 or 5 kings and get back everything that they stole. That takes a lot of courage. So now we see his compassion. I'm going to talk about Abraham's compassion today. And then in Hebrews 11, his credibility as a model of faith stems from his actions of obedience. And we all know that without faith, it's impossible to please God. So, you children, can you raise your hand if you want to please God? We all want to please God, right? So, if we want to please God, let's pay attention to how Abraham lived his life, because he was called the friend of God. So as Abraham left his father's house, where did Abraham have to live in? What did he live in? He couldn't take his house with him. He had to carry something that he could carry. Hold on, Mike. Let's see if the younger ones know. Does anyone else know? Do you know, Kyle? You know, Christopher? Azariah, do you know? A tent. He carried a tent around, and he lived in a tent. And then one day, it says, in the middle of the day, which was an odd time for people to be moving, he was in his tent in the shade just resting. And then he looked up, and he seen 3 people walking toward him. And Abraham recognized right away that these were 3 unusual people. These were special people. And if you meet special people, if you see special people, Abraham ran out and he bowed down to these people. He bowed down and he said, why don't you guys stay here for a minute, and I will get a little bit of water, I will wash your feet, and you guys can rest yourself. And he said, I will get some bread and some meat before you go on. And they said, well, do as your servant said. So Abraham had a lot of what? Sheep, cattle, goats. He had a lot of food. So he ran out at, how old do you guess Abraham was at this age? Anyone guess how old Abraham was? It was just before, a year before he had, his wife had that baby. That gives you a clue. He was 90-some years old. Anyone want to make a guess?
96.
98. He was 98 years old, and he ran out into the herd of calves, and he probably picked the best fat one. He gave it to his servant, and his servant hurried and took it and cut it. Then he went into the house where Sarah was. Sarah was in the house, and he said, why don't you hurry and make some bread for these gentlemen? So Sarah was older too, and she was in the house, and she started making bread for these people, and they sat down and waited for Abraham and Sarah to serve them, give them food, water, and drink, just like they had said. So when everything was cooked and made, Abraham brought it out, and it says he stood there and waited on him. What if there was anything else they need? Does your meat have enough salt? Is this to your flavor? Do you want more water? They even had milk. Now, it was strange to me. I was thinking, I don't think they had refrigerators back then. He had to drink warm milk. I wasn't sure if I would like that or not, but I just caught that this morning. It said he brought milk. He took butter, milk, and the calf, which he dressed and set it before them. And as Elmer knows, meat that hasn't rested is pretty tough too. That's why it was a calf. But didn't you shoot a little young doe this year and she was still tough? You and Will? Yeah. So they put it in. Anyway, I think the food was good. Once they got all done eating, and they started talking. And he said, "Where is Sarah?" And he said, "Well, she's in the tent, but I think they probably couldn't see her, so she was either behind a curtain or behind the tent or somewhere close." And he said, "Well, this time next year, she's going to have a baby." Well, Sarah thought it was funny because they had been trying for years and they were old. Raise your hand if you've ever seen a grandma or grandpa carry a young baby that was theirs. Good, because you never have. It doesn't happen. And that's why Sarah thought it was funny. And she laughed. And these men knew, and they said, "Why did Sarah laugh?" And then she came out and she tried to make an excuse. And she said, "No, I didn't laugh." And they said, "Yeah, you did laugh." They knew everything. You're going to have a baby. You think it's funny. You're going to laugh. But he said, "Is anything too hard for the Lord?" What do you children think? Is there anything too hard for God? Justice? Is there anything too hard for God? No. Good answer. There's nothing too hard for God. Is there something God cannot do? Yeah, he cannot lie, right? So now, as they continued their journey and Abraham was a friend of God, he said, "Abraham, there is a problem though." He said, "You're a servant of mine," but he said, "There's this one city down here, and we heard that this city is so wicked that I'm going to go down and see if it's as evil as they say it is." So he said, "I'm sending my 2 servants down there." And the 2 servants started walking toward the city. And I can picture Abraham and God staying back talking. So as the servants journeyed down to the city, they were on their way. They started walking down there. Abraham started talking with God about this city. This was God. This was Abraham. And Abraham knew that the city had a lot of wicked people, but he also knew that his nephew Lot lived in that city. So he had compassion for Lot, and he said, "Lord, what if there are only 50 righteous people? I know there's a lot of wicked people, but only 50 righteous in this city. Will you still destroy it?" And God said, "No, if I find 50 righteous, I will save the whole place." He didn't say just the 50. He said, "I'll save the whole place." And Abraham started thinking, and in his mind, he was like, "Man, I don't even think there's 50 there." And he said, "Lord, I am but dust and ashes." He was like, "Lord, I'm nobody. But what if there are only 45? And then he said 40, 35, 30. He came all the way down to 20. He said, "Lord, don't get mad at me, but I want to only ask one more favor. What if there's only 10 righteous?" And God said, "Well, if there's only 10 righteous, I will not destroy it." So not only does Abraham have compassion to deal, but God has a lot of compassion, right? Now, if you think with me, there was Lot, his wife. Micah, how many daughters did Lot have? Does anybody know up here? How many daughters? Elmer, do you know? 2. He had 2 daughters.
I was thinking about the pillar of salt, too.
2 of them were married. The 2 daughters were married. And then the 2 more, So if I did my math right, with Lot, Sarah, the 2 daughters, somehow I came up with 10. I don't remember how. Maybe it's only 8. But I was thinking, well, Abraham probably thought, surely Lot and his whole family are righteous. So God said, no, if I only find 10 righteous, I will not destroy it for the 10's sake. Then the Lord went his way, and Abraham didn't know what was going to become of the city. And I imagine Abraham early the next morning got up and he looked down at the city, and what did he see? There was a whole cloud of smoke going up. The whole city was destroyed. Now, did God keep his word? What happened? Were there not 10 righteous? Does anyone know what happened? Remember the 2 men that went down to the city, what happened to them? They found Lot, his family, and they told Lot twice to get out. The whole thing's going to get burned. Finally, the angels took the 2 daughters' hands and left the city, pulled them out. So Lot, his 2 daughters, his wife, all left before it burned. But then something happened. As they were leaving, God told them, do not look back. And Lot's wife looked back. Zach, why is she all white? What did she turn into? You don't know? Azariah, do you know? Salt! Would anybody want to, when we were children, Dad put out a salt block, we would go out and lick it. I don't think I'd want to lick this one. That's not a good one. So I'm going to leave this story up here as you children throughout the sermon think about this, because there's a lot we can take from all of this, right? There's a lot. Didn't even think about that one. So we can see how holy God is, right? God's a holy God. He deals with wickedness, right? Now, he's also merciful and loving, because if 50 righteous could be found in the whole place, he would have spared everything. So, let's see. So, do you children remember how many people actually escaped? Hold up on one hand, from 5 to 1, how many people escaped this city? Hold up on your hand how much you think. Every one of you hold up on your hand. Lige, how many you think? 1, 2, 3. I'm going to give you a choice. 1, 2, or 3. Theo. He thinks Elmer escaped. Justice, do you know? Hold up your fingers. How many? Micah, hold them up. Hold them up. How many? You think 3, 2? 4. So Zach, you're right. Hold up your fingers. I can't tell. 3, 3. What are you holding up? 5. 5. Only 3 escaped. Lot, his 2 daughters. His wife did not escape. Now, do you think if there was only 1 righteous person in there, he would have escaped? Absolutely. How do we become righteous? How do we, because there's a fire coming, right? Called hell. It's going to burn all the wicked people. How do we escape hell? Believe. Abraham believed God and he became righteous. So the righteous people don't go to hell. So why did Sarah turn into a pillar of salt? She disobeyed God, right? So here we have God, we have good, we have evil, and then we have choices that we can make through life, right? So this story demonstrates the need to trust and believe on God, and when we believe, we, like Abraham, become righteous, right? And so the righteous do not inherit hell. So I'm going to leave with you guys Psalm 1. And the last verse is what I want to get at. For the Lord knoweth the way of the righteous, but the way of the ungodly will perish. So I'm going to read the whole verse to you. Blessed, and if you guys ever want to learn to memorize something, this is a good psalm to memorize. Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law does he meditate day and night. He shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water, that bringeth forth his fruit in his season. His leaf also shall not wither, and whatever he doeth shall prosper. Did Abraham prosper? Absolutely, because he was following God. The ungodly are not so, but they are like the chaff which the wind driveth away. Therefore, the ungodly shall not stand in judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For God knoweth the way of the righteous, but the ungodly shall perish. So, with that thought in your mind, you children are dismissed.